Science shouldn't feel like a closed door. Welcome to Human Verified, your backstage pass to the world of high stakes research and the business of staying alive. My name is Gina Winchester, a Native American scientist, professor, author, and I've created this space where we swap dense academic jargon for fresh, no nonsense insights. Whether I'm deconstructing pharmaceutical breakthroughs, clinical trials, or the how this is legal side of STEM business, I'm here to bridge the gap between the lab bench and your daily life. It's rigorous research met with real world storytelling because understanding how science works is the ultimate power move. The anti-Pangram argument. It's an existential crisis for Substack authors. The debate over Pangram on Substack is heating up, and for good reason. It forces us to confront the difference between using AI for support and relying on it for total generation. In this piece, I'll explore that tension and share how I use AI within the Google Suite to keep my weekly editorials on track. I'll also share a surreal experience where an AI detector flagged my own writings as non-human, then ironically offered to help me humanize it. Let's get into it. I want to begin this human verified editorial by showing you how my text runs through a program called Grammarly. Grammarly has been around since 2009. It was introduced as a more advanced version of a Microsoft Word's familiar red squiggly lines that made up its spell check and review function. Grammarly was created by two Ukrainians who had built a plagiarism tracker for universities. What they realized was that many students weren't intentionally cheating. They were just struggling to write confidently. This is how Grammarly was born. Early on, Grammarly relied on humongous rule books compiled by linguists to flag basic errors. But as machine learning advanced, the software learned to analyze whole sentences. It moved past rigid mechanics and started evaluating context, flow, and overall tone. It was and has continued to be a smart editor. It differs slightly from the generative AI era, where tools can write entire pages from scratch instead of just polishing what's already there. The key difference between Grammarly and platforms like ChatGPT or Gemini comes down to how you actually use them. ChatGPT and Gemini act as conversational partners, where you drop into a chat window, type a prompt, and ask them to brainstorm, research, or generate brand new content. Grammarly is different in that it runs quietly in the background as an integrated overlay. As you type in Gmail or Google Docs, it highlights mistakes right on your screen without leaving your workflow. While it has added generative features over time, its main purpose remains real-time editing, helping whatever you write come across as clean, clear, and natural. The entire Google Suite still has the Grammarly extension and can be incorporated right alongside Gemini. They are similar, but they do slightly different things in different ways. Here is how I use Grammarly to edit the following text. Number 1. I jot down my thoughts. Number 2. Grammarly flags them for suggestions. Number 3. I either go with the suggestions or provide custom instructions. Number 4. I often give it specific directives to shape the final result. This is the result. Me. I had a completely different human verified article scheduled for this week, but given the Pangram debate, I changed my focus. I am amazed at how the integration of Pangram has sparked such opposing positions. And the vehemently opposing positions, let's explore the Pangram integration into Substack. Versus Grammarly and Google. I initially had a different human verified editorial planned for this week, but the recent debate surrounding Pangram prompted me to shift my focus. I'm struck by how the integration of Pangram has ignited such starkly opposing views. To understand why this topic has become so contentious, let's delve into the integration of Pangram into Substack. You see how the Grammarly changes vary only slightly from the original text, but don't take away from my meaning or my intentions. There are some word choice and structural changes, but it's still neat. But what about something like Gemini? As I said, Grammarly and Gemini are slightly different. Here is a table comparing Grammarly to ChatGPT and Gemini. It helps put the information in one place so we can understand what we're comparing. When it comes to primary focus, Grammarly uses real-time editing, refinement, and tone alignment as you write, while ChatGPT and Gemini use generative creation, deep reasoning, coding, and open-ended Q&A. For user interface, Grammarly has ambient and inline, functions as an omnipresent browser system extension that overlays on top of Gmail, Google Docs, Slack, and Word. ChatGPT and Gemini, conversational/sandbox, functions primarily through a central chat window or dedicated AI workspace. Interaction style, non-disruptive inline suggestions for Grammarly, underlines text and suggests precise micro-edits with single-click acceptances. ChatGPT and Gemini, they're prompt-driven, requires you to copy-paste text into the chat and instruct the model on how to modify it, unless using specific integrations. Personalization. Grammarly remembers team-style guides, tone settings, and custom dictionaries across applications, while ChatGPT and Gemini adapt based on custom instructions or chat history, but don't actively reinforce a corporate brand-style guide live in other apps. Their core architecture. Grammarly has a hybrid blend of specialized NLP for rapid rule style checks, plus LLMs for drafting and rewrites. ChatGPT and Gemini, primarily massive general-purpose LLMs trained to handle everything from creative writing to complex logic and math. This brings us to the real heart of the matter. Whether we realize it or not, most of us have leaned on some form of large language model for over a decade. Now that Substack has integrated Pangram, the big question is, does using these tools mean we're plagiarizing or faking our work when the original ideas still come from us? I totally get the backlash against people who let bots generate entire posts from scratch. But when you use AI as a digital editor or a tool to sharpen your craft, does that really cross the line? Is it actually misleading or wrong? I've already walked you through my process with Grammarly, but as I mentioned, I also rely on Gemini. Let's take a look at how that works. In Google Docs, you'll find Gemini waiting at the bottom of your screen, marked by a light blue diamond icon. When I use Gemini, I highlight a passage and give it a specific prompt. The tool then presents my original text alongside suggested version, leaving the final decision to me. This part is crucial because it keeps me in the driver's seat. The words remain mine. I'm just getting a little extra support to make them better. I accept about 60% of the changes Gemini suggests. While the core ideas remain entirely mine, the tool sharpens my phrasing, elevates my word choice, and nudges my prose towards an active voice. I struggle with maintaining active voice, and without an artificial editor, my sentences would just run on and on and on and on and on and on. Most writers do this. Passive voice dominates because it sounds elaborate and flowery. Active voice is direct and succinct. It's also easier to read. Passive voice loses the reader, but you sound smart. And when I use artificial editors to help me with this problem, Pangram and other detection tools slap my editorials with an AI generated label. This branding creates a misleading narrative, implying that the thoughts and words aren't my own. The debate over AI in creative fields isn't new. It has dominated the conversation since generative LLMs first launched. And I don't disagree with the controversy necessarily. Substack CEO Chris Best said the Pangram integration is geared towards the authors who deny they use AI and then try to pass off the AI generated or edited work as entirely human. And he's not wrong. Bots are everywhere posing as humans, and in a social space like Substack, this could be really damaging. On other platforms, you expect bots. But on Substack, where the focus is on writing and publishing, bots are particularly dangerous. I even got my own bot imitation just the other day. An account that is clearly a bot tried to impersonate me. Badly, I might add. It pretended that I co-authored a Substack post, but I had not. I reported the account as likely a bot, added a note to let people know it wasn't me, and commented on the original post to deny the collaboration. You know you're making real change when the bots come for you. The community outrage no one expected. You'd think that the Substack community would be mostly on the I hate AI in all its forms bandwagon. But in fact, it's the opposite. I think it's because most writers have been using one of these programs in one form or another for more than a decade, and these are just the newest versions of the same artificial editor. Overall, the community is questioning the accuracy of AI detectors like Pangram. Critics point to glaring contradictions. A detector might label an entire article 100% human written, while simultaneously flagging individual paragraphs within the same piece as 100% AI. Some observers have even compared this aggressive labeling to a witch hunt or modern-day inquisition. On one hand, I've dealt with bots impersonating me and falsely claiming we've collaborated. On the other hand, I use these algorithms as an artificial editor to sharpen my style, and now I'm stuck. The hardline stance that any digital assistance automatically discredits a writer's work just doesn't seem right. Editors are vital in all written works, and artificial editors are so useful. They don't replace human editors, because we still need those too, but they add one more layer of editing that makes the pieces better. So this controversy raises an existential question about fair use. If a writer uses AI to brainstorm, structure, or edit their own thoughts, rather than generating them from scratch, does that really make the work less human? I don't think so, but some do. Who's right? Who's wrong? Then there is the accuracy and reliability issue. Labels aren't the only problem. We also have to talk about bias. These detectors frequently fail neurodivergent authors, academics, and non-native English speakers. In fact, research shows these tools misidentify work by non-native speakers about 60% of the time. We see the same frustrating pattern for writers with autism or ADHD. Because these authors often rely on precise, highly detailed language, algorithms mislabel their style as inauthentic. In reality, it's deeply human, a specific way of communicating that involves structure and detail. If the algorithms misidentify this human-verified way of writing as not real or misleading, how is that useful? How do you prove it's your original creation? And what are these AI detectors looking for? These detection programs simply calculate the probability of AI involvement by measuring word predictability and sentence variation. They typically evaluate text based on 3 markers, but it can be more. 1. Human writing typically displays high variance, complexity, and irregular sentence structures. 2. Formulaic writing with smooth, predictable transitions often signals non-human content. 3. Highly structured or rigid layouts frequently trigger AI-generated labels. But they can't know if a work is AI-generated, nor can they determine if that distinction actually matters for a specific piece. So people have started to write worse, to bypass the detectors by intentionally introducing typos, informal slang, or clunky phrasing just to prove their humanity. Then I have to ask myself, couldn't someone simply prompt an AI to generate bad writing to fool the system? These tools have been designed to help writers, but the only way to be authentic is to be a bad writer? That doesn't make sense to me. I'm going to end this editorial by taking a scientific abstract from 2017 that I didn't use any version of Grammarly with and run it through an AI detector. It's entirely human generated, so we know the outcome. Let's see what we get. An original scientific abstract from 2017. Below, I've taken an abstract from a conference I went to in Kyoto, Japan, where I presented at the Alzheimer's Disease International Conference that year. I've run the text through Gemini and asked it to evaluate the probability that it is AI generated. I know it would make it through, but I want to show you some of the things Gemini was looking for to show you what makes these programs flag something as AI instead of human. The AD spectrum of disorders, an end-stage fate of cardiovascular, metabolic, and nephrological dysfunction. Gina Winchester. ADI Kyoto 2017. Topic: Risk reduction and risk factors. Nearly half of all Alzheimer's disease cases show signs of strictly AD pathology, while others present with mixed dementia pathologies. There are cardiovascular, metabolic, and nephrological components to the growth of AD pathology that relate to neuronal and synaptic dysfunction. Insert references here. Individuals with AD and vascular comorbidities seem to have the greatest impairments in similar cortical areas when compared to either diagnosis alone. Insulin is involved in a number of late-life neurodegenerative factors. Accordingly, diabetes mellitus patients have a similar type of cortical atrophy corresponding to plaque accumulation and a loss of memory and executive functioning in Alzheimer's. Insert references, but these are mine. Dementia and chronic kidney disease and end-stage renal disease, CKD and ESRD, is common and frequently remains underdiagnosed. This dementia may be due in part to oxidative stress, inflammation, endocrine disorders, uremic toxicity, psychosocial stress, and the elevated burden of cardiovascular and cerebrovascular risk factors, including diabetes, hypertension, and dyslipidemia that are present in the CKD-ESRD population. Renal insufficiency, diabetes, hypertension, dyslipidemia, and heart disease treatment may be independent factors for developing cognitive impairment. Then I put a couple more references. Here's where I wrap it all up. And this is important. Taken together, nephrological, metabolic, and cardiovascular dysfunctions are found among Alzheimer's, vascular dementia, diabetes, and CKD-ESRD populations, suggesting that there is a spectrum of vascular, metabolic, and nephrological dementia disorders that broaden the diagnostic definition of Alzheimer's, with areas of overlap and distinction. I cite an article I wrote in 2016. Here, these will be referred to as the Alzheimer's spectrum of disorders. We seek to define and explain the nature and scope of breakdown observed among the Alzheimer's spectrum, provide evidence, and expound on the previous literature to elucidate the nature and scope of neurocognitive impairment observed at the mild cognitive impairment stage. What I take away from this is that even with a PhD level human editor by my side, we overlooked 6 distinct errors and several structural flaws. The biggest one is highlighted above in bold, where underdiagnosed, separated into 2 words, should be underdiagnosed, all one word. It's a humbling reminder. Human eyes often gloss over the very mistakes that an automated editor would have instantly flagged. So I asked Gemini to analyze the abstract and tell me if it was AI generated and give me its logic and analysis. This is what it said. Plagiarism and literature integrity assessment. Number 1, direct web/database matches. 0% copy-paste plagiarism. The text does not match any existing indexed web pages or published literature verbatim. 2, citation accuracy. 100% legitimate. The inline academic citations reference real, peer-reviewed medical studies discussing vascular comorbidities, insulin resistance, and renal insufficiency in cognitive decline. 3, domain context. The passage introduces specific terminology, notably co-authoring patterns surrounding Winchester et al. And proposing the conceptual framework of the Alzheimer's spectrum of disorders. Verdict. This text is fully original in terms of scholarly ownership. It contains no traditional copy-paste plagiarism or uncited source theft. AI versus human text analysis. Estimated breakdown. 1, human authored, 90 to 95%. AI generated, 0%. Mixed light AI assistance, 5 to 10%, confined entirely to standard academic transition phrasing. I just want to remind you guys, this is 100% generated. Grammarly and all of these LLMs didn't exist yet, but it still thinks 5 to 10% was AI assisted. Why detectors classify this text as human generated? I thought this was particularly important so you guys can see why the detectors are picking up certain things. So, number 1, it says I have a high structural perplexity and burstiness. That is the first time anyone has said I have burstiness. Sentence variety. Sentence lengths vary naturally, ranging from short declarative statements to complex multi-clause academic summaries listing comorbidities. Of course, it's a literature review. Non-formulaic rhythm. Generative LLMs typically default to symmetrical, balanced prose. This excerpt uses dense, highly specific jargon stacked in an organic, research-driven cadence. My PhD thesis advisor would be so happy by that statement. That took 6 years. Complex in-text parenthetical citations. This one is interesting because LLMs notoriously struggle to seamlessly integrate dense multi-author, multi-year parenthetical citation blocks mid-sentence without disrupting the surrounding grammar. So I find that really interesting that actually LLMs have a hard time putting those citations in the middle of the sentence and then have the sentence still make sense when you don't read them, because you're not really supposed to read them. They're just there for reference. In a journal, they would be clickable links like I do in my text. Domain specificity and deep academic density. The text transitions fluidly between subdisciplines, combining nephrology, endocrinology, cardiovascular pathology, and neurobiology to build a specific hypothesis. LLMs tend to summarize these concepts broadly rather than interweaving them with granular medical precision. That's right, because I'm a scientist, duh. Potential AI flags. This is what's interesting because remember, I did this before the LLMs existed, so this is all person. If a strict probability-based detector like Turnitin or PuppyLeaks were to highlight any section as potentially non-original, it would be the opening sentence of the second paragraph. Remember I told you that this was important? Taken together, nephrological, metabolic, and cardiovascular dysfunctions are found among Alzheimer's, vascular dementia, diabetes, and CKD-ESRD populations, suggesting that there is a spectrum of vascular ... so on and so forth. Why an algorithm might flag it. Transition phrases like taken together and here, these will be referred to as are common transition markers heavily present in LLM-trained corpora. The reality. This is simply standard formal academic prose. As established in empirical literature, medical and scientific literature frequently triggers minor false positive flags due to the standardized, repetitive nature of academic protocol language. Verifying the humanity in this entirely human-generated text. Even though my 2017 abstract was written before Grammarly was incorporated into Google Docs, and 5 years before ChatGPT was released, the AI detection software would have flagged a summary sentence structure that is common in science. Taken together is a key phrase that scientists use to transition from one topic to another in literature reviews or abstracts they are putting together. As I put down this human-verified editorial and walk away from the screen, I am left with 2 conclusions. The need for AI detection in text generation is needed in some situations, and I'm not entirely sure which one calls for it and which ones don't. What I can be sure of, though, is that the community is largely against AI detection labeling on Substacks, because it can give a misleading impression that the piece isn't original for any of the reasons shown here. Note, like other writers right now, I left structural, flow, and voice issues in this article to give you an idea of how I am minus the artificial editors. You've probably noticed that it's still just me, just a little less polished and ultimately human verified. Even Pangram agrees that this is mostly me. It says that the text is 17% AI because I pasted right from Gemini. It's 13% AI assisted because I did use Gemini and Grammarly, and it's 70% human. Next week, I'll be back to the polished, well-intentioned, deeply edited version of the human verified content because I care about what I put out there, and you deserve the best version of me. Thank you for spending this time with me today.